Testing 1, 2,
That's
3.
fine, absolutely fine. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Spark Ninja podcast with Dave and Dave. It is mid-June?
Mid-June, yeah.
Mid-June,
yeah.
mid-June. Okay, it's warm. It's warm. How have you been coping this week with the heat?
Yeah, bad. It's been a challenge at work. I must admit, the workplaces where we are at the moment have been quite cool. I've been working in a gym, so air conditioning is very good there. And the one building we're in sort of is just all concrete and nice and cool. But you go outside and you literally melt. It does bring the question of what's happening to the electricity outside with all these high ambience going on.
Well, I had 239.1 this last week, and after the first, we were upstairs because obviously in my building, our training room's up on the first floor, and then we've got the downstairs. Yeah. We've got the breakout room, and then the mess room where I just chuck stuff down, and then there's the assessment, and then upstairs is an office, 3 rooms that are not really used at the moment, and the training room. It was just too hot, and so on the for the rest of the week we were just downstairs in the breakout room, a lot cooler, because we don't have any aircon in our building. It's freezing in the winter and it's boiling in the summer. Trying to things out there, but it was quite exhausting week. But the guys got done. The guys got done by the Thursday. Nice little small group. Then I had a guy come in on Friday for his 2, 3, 6, 5 level 2 practical assessments for the experienced worker. So he's a gentleman who's got a business. He's from he's from the services background or the forces background, and he's done HNC, HND. He's got engineering apprenticeships and all that stuff. Because he doesn't have the building services, he's obviously unable to obtain his NIC EIC. And so he's having to jump through these hoops. So he popped in on Friday to do those. These assessments are level 2, so he flew through those. And that was the week, really. That was the week for me. I think next week I've got... you know what? I've got in the calendar on Monday, day off written down.
Nah.
Which means I'm going to do an awful lot of work. But I've got an awful lot of overflow work. I've got portfolios everywhere to kind of tidy up. I've got some writing to do for some courses over in Northern Ireland, but I'm actually not in the centre this week. I am working from home on Monday, and then this coming week it's Install a Show on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Have you ever gone to an Install a Show one?
No, I've been to Alex. Alex is quite a common one for myself. This year I'm struggling with the time with the ongoing projects at the moment, all coming to a close around about this time. So I'm struggling to get to any installer shows as much as I really want to. Maybe I should book a holiday for one. But yeah, I do miss them. I do miss them. My week's quite packed out.
I put them in. I put them in my calendar, so I try not to put courses on, so I can get to them if I can get to them. Alex in Harrogate. I got to Alex in Harrogate because I was actually driving past, because I was in Telford at Hager's site doing the large scale EV course. So the day I finished that course, I stayed in the hotel the next night, and then on the Friday I drove past, obviously, the Harrogate Yorkshire area to drive home in the northeast. So I popped in and I gave TIS all my money for PV test equipment. I wanted to go to CEF Live. It was in my diary, but I was just too busy. Too busy. The Installer Show I've kept free in the diary, but again, I've got so much overflow of work, I'm still on the fence. The Installer Show is interesting to me, though, because obviously it's originally like plumbing and heating, but they're adding electrical now, especially as we're now pushing a lot more towards the electrification of systems. So I'm interested in looking more into heat pumps and those systems to try to obviously push my understanding in that area. So I might see if I can this week get there at least for one of the days, because they've got obviously different things on the 3 days. I said to my wife, I said, yeah, I could. She goes, go, it's networking, it's good. And I'm like, yeah, I've got so much to do. So I don't know. Jury's out at the moment. I might be able to pop down this week. We'll see.
Do you ever find yourself feeling a little bit guilty when you do go to these shows and you've got things to do? It can be quite
Um,
on your mind while you're there.
it kind the problem is, you know, you should work for yourself. You know, if the oil's not turning, you're not earning. And at the end of the day, you have to give yourself some time to kind of then do other bits. And it's one of the things I can do, obviously, you know, with the kids is I've always got work to do. And if everyone is doing something, I'll go and do some work. But I'll always make sure that I'll do something with the kids, you know, to try to obviously make sure I can assign that to myself, that I've had some quality family time. But things like going to an event or a show, as long as I can kind of justify it, such as it's networking or I have gained CPD, as long as I can gain value from it, then I can put it into the into the benefit of the business. When I went to LX, obviously I got the kits. I could have bought that online. But I had a great chat with the lads from the IET, almost enough to convince me to apply for membership. It's like I've always kind of ignored, but I had a good chat with them. I kind of thought, I need to do something, so I might even go forward with that. Had a really good chat with them, and the ability to have that face to face and that that little little discreet conversation instead of the professional space like an internet forum, whatever, just means that you can get a lot more of an honest opinion from how things are, and I found that quite valuable, especially for the reactance calculations I have to do. So yeah, no, as long as I can get enough value of it. And this is, again, I'm a little bit skeptical about the installer show because I'm interested in heating pumps, but I don't know if it's in any way in the interest of my business to know, because I can just probably learn as much online as I can. But the networking is also quite a fun thing. So we'll see. I'm thinking I'll go, but I will definitely be saying to myself what work I won't be doing or what I won't get achieved if I do. And that's the thing. A lot of people, when they go to these things, they're going to say, "Oh, it's a day off work," and immediately you're then going to have that impact where you're going to think about what you didn't manage to get done. But yeah, so that's coming up this week. What have you been up to?
This week I've been with a project manager, David, up in Bristol, one of our clients, doing a gym. So it's time for the commissioning and testing part of it before we energize. So we've done some authorization works within the gym because they're having a refit, big spend, and basically going through everything, making sure everything's right. The lads are doing everything correct. We're fully compliant, getting the testing on, changing the devices. We've got a lot of Type AC devices existing in the alteration, so we're changing them for Type A's. And I must admit, when you get to these older boards and you know what the three-phase distribution board's like and the earth bars at the bottom right or bottom left, and the cables come down right over it.
Yeah.
So I'm working at nights to turn it off.
Good.
Those cables out.
Yeah.
Full isolation. They offer you. This is the proper work. We have a permits and sanctioned test, isolate, anything like that is pretty much documented in here. They have a full lotto system with register, competent persons and APs, and it's a proper world, which is good to see. So I've had to isolate, get the cables out of the way, get my cables in, retorque all the cables back up to the spec to do some Merlin board. So I had to go find some data on that. Usually Schneider's pretty much.
So Schneider bought them, didn't they? And they did do a release not long after they bought them to say that basically Schneider equals this. There was a pretty much an immediate
conformity of the Schneider breakers going into the
straight into
even though I knew it was kind of there and 536 3204, I'm pretty sure it was there. So I just wanted to make sure that I was conforming. So I basically checked it all out anyway. Got the letter of conformity. So yeah, we put in the devices, tested out the circuits, everything good. That was my Monday, excellent. But sadly, you work at nights. The next day can be a little bit hard. I in at 4 a.m. in the morning. Couldn't go to sleep straight away, as you know. It's not just a machine you can go to sleep. I don't know if any of the viewers work nights. It's not it's not a very good setup when you got work the next day. So I woke up at 12 on Tuesday, and then I started doing some QSing, some ecom, some planning of my next couple of days. I had a Teams meeting for a job, so I went through that. Then Wednesday I stayed over in Barking, where one of our jobs are. And that's when I started to do our pre-inspection and testing and commissioning for a job to be finalised. So it's going through, making sure, take all the connections off, making sure they're correct, identification, no coppers on show, bending radiuses, all the stuff that kind of catches you out when you have a sort of
all those little those little inspections, those little things, yeah.
Yeah. So that was pretty much my week. Friday was back at the gym again to do some daytime testing, which was good, where we were in control. We didn't have to shut down anything on this. It was pretty much a board being shut down in a kitchen that's being ripped out, so the kitchen was in our full control, so we didn't have to do any nights on that. So that's been my week. My next week coming up is interesting. I'm going to London, central London, Monday to a nice place, sort of like a museum of sorts with offices in it, and I'll be catching a train at 5 a.m. in the morning, and then I'll be going to Bristol again on Tuesday. Then I'll be staying over a night again in Barking on Wednesday, Thursday, and it's sort of a repeat of this week.
Yeah.
So my time is like a lot of CPD in the hotel room.
Oh, those trains into London, I didn't like those.
No, it depends which one you go on.
Yeah, I never liked those. I mean, obviously, from where I am now, I have to go on the LNR all the way down to King's Cross. I'll get in at King's Cross. Yeah. I used to go into Waterloo when I lived along the M4 corridor, but every as soon as I got into London, I just wanted to kind of get out of London.
I enjoy it. I quite like the tube still. I think I'm kind of.
You don't drive around London. That's the difference.
The furthest I'll go into London is Barking. I'll drive to Barking. I have a hybrid car supplied by work, and you wouldn't believe it's a 4-hour drive, but £10 in fuel.
Yeah, that's about right.
I'm about the same on the train from where I live. It's by the time you get off the train and then onto the tube and then car park, it's actually cheap just to drive it.
It's like when I used to do some work with City and Guilds, they have an office on Gilsborough Street, which is obviously in the London area, and when I did some work in Fenchurch and stuff, you're getting on the train so early, and you get into London, and by the time you then finish and you get home, it's like, I don't know, it must be like nearly an 18-hour day. You know, if you do it all in one day, it is. But that's again, if the money's good, then it's worth it. All right, so what have we done this week for our CPD?
Well, with my sort of like roles this week, I've been heavily into GM3, going over everything, to be honest.
GM3.
The whole initial verification process, the continuity of protector conductors, ring finals, insulation resistance, separation polarity, your earth loops, your PSCs, SSCs, PAFCs, PFCs, RCD testing, functional testing, the whole suite I've gone through, just to recap, really.
Well, I mean, obviously I've had a 2391, so I've been in that book all week, as well as 7671, but that's not really CPD for me, that's just work. I have been reading up 60947-2 2025, which is obviously not recently out. So if anyone's done any EICR or whatever, and you write down the breakers and you go, okay, yeah, 60898, 61009, and this one's 60947-2. The key difference between 60898 and 609472 is the 60898 is labelled for household and similar use. So the 60898 form and device should not be adjustable, modified, or anything like that, and it's designed for an ordinary person to be able to reset that. Whilst the 609472 is designed in a more skilled, competent person kind of operation, modifying all that stuff, and it's obviously in a more industrial and commercial area. So there's been an update and a new draft on the enclosures and the standards for these devices, and obviously I'm quite heavily interested and involved in the arc flash space, as well as neutral current diversion, all these things. We're constantly looking at the approach to arc flash with qualifications and consultancy and training that I provide and all this stuff. And And one of the guys that I speak to regularly online, David Davenport, Mr. Arc Flash, he works with a company that manufactures this technology that is designed to actually operate and react to arc, which is always a good thing. I bring this onto my 2396, where we do our designs and we look at obviously selection and erection, and I'll try to address the risk of arc flash to the guys there and then. To say, if you're going to then ingest this amount of money into switchgear, you should look at these kind of companies that will provide optical sensors or quenching devices that will react to an arc flash, because it's a huge saving in an event, and then not too expensive if you invest them at the right time in that order. But obviously under 69472, there's been a push that's really strengthening this requirement for us to look at the risks of arcing in the actual equipment as well. So that's interesting. There's a lot of noise in that space saying it's becoming more of a mandatory thing to consider in selection erection, to comply with the codes anyway. So I think that this is going to be becoming more and more of a known thing. There are these things that we can think about getting as a maybe. There's that little tube you can put into a board that that reacts with fire. There's the little heat connectors. There's all these little things that over the 6 or 7 years that I've known, obviously the E5 boys, I've had to go with some. Paul's had to go with some. We put them on this route. We've always had a dabble with these things that are innovations to help. With me in thermal imaging, we've got thermal imaging windows and all these other reporting technologies. And it's the same with these arc quenching devices. They're not well known, but obviously when these changes happen, they'll become more of a common thing. And obviously I'm looking at all of this along with what's happening with neutral current diversion, and Matty are obviously bringing up a newer version of their neutral current diversion detection device, which I've got an early prototype of in my center. And so I've been doing a bit of CPD on that, looking at the standards and seeing how those standards then structure the way we are going to make better design decisions moving on. I'm trying to. I've only been read only, so I'm trying to get actually a physical copy. I'm trying to, find a subscription or just pay 300 quid for it. But I managed to read it in read only mode, so I've seen the core bits of it, and it's very very important for us from a design perspective moving forwards. So that was interesting. That was my bit of CPD, and that's not really this week. That's more something I've done over the weekend, really. I have been working right now. Well, I didn't sleep last night, so if I do yawn, I do apologise. But with the heat and the kids, I've been working all night long through portfolios, and then I've been entertaining my kids all day, and they're now in bed, so we're back to doing a little bit of work, and I'll be pretty much heading to bed in the next hour and a half probably. So I did a bit of CPD on that. And the other bit of CPD I did this week actually is I picked up a copy of Guidance Notes 1, just to kind of familiarise myself with it, because there's an awful lot in Guidance Notes 1. It's very hard to summarise.
One of my favourite Guidance Notes, Note 1.
So it's too much to kind of summarise what's in there, but selection direction. So I had a good read of that. So that's my CPD this week. I've already got some my eyes on some CPD for this week coming. There's some bits that I need to look into. A good long-standing client of mine, they've just had inverters installed. They've got 20, 30 factories in the UK and over in parts of Europe, and their method has always been, up till now, for all the solar inverters being installed in their infrastructure to be externally mounted. So put the inverters on the outside of the building. Find a place, find a position, put the inverters on the outside. New contractors come in, obviously, with the funding and all this stuff. They've come in and they've put these 3 fairly large inverters into a server room that has no ventilation. When they walked in there, it's just like, So I've now got to do a little bit of digging into, obviously, the inverter technology and the actual ambient temperatures, their wiring systems, and just see where things are. That's my little bit of work I'll also be doing the early part of this week coming. But that's the CPDs that we're working on at the moment. All right. Oh, what else have I had going on? I have been added to a private little community of guys. That sounds a bit strange, actually. I can't say too much about it, but basically, there's a group of professionals who are looking to try to reapproach the challenges that we have with the in-service inspection and testing of electrical equipment. All right, I'll call it PAT testing, just to kind of bring everyone up to speed. But there is a training organization, as they call themselves, that I have provided training services to before, that try to create a PAT sector kind of branch. But for all intents and purposes, we've not seen much improvement. So another little group have got together, more from a trading standards approach, from the area of testing equipment to destruction, counterfeit technologies. An awful lot of highly knowledgeable guys, and they've brought me in there as well, looking at how we can provide support and discuss these issues that we have with this sector itself, the in-service inspection testing. Most electrical companies, most electricians will go, well, just PAT testing. They'll just go, no, I don't want to do that, and they'll outsource it or whatever, or they'll give it to the apprentice. If you take the subject on head on, it really is an interesting subject, and it really is a good opportunity to actually help support your customers, and you don't have to PAT test the way people PAT test. Sorry, mate, you were saying?
Oh no, I'm just saying the challenges of PAT testing is exactly as you said. It's easy. It's not hard. Do you need to be qualified to PAT test? Do you need any competency? I mean, I went into the COP and it certainly said in there you need to, and then other sections like EICR Regulation 16, the competence, certainly had it. There was some stuff in health and safety, 1974, that said you had to have it, but it seems to be one of them things where I've even had people in the past mention to me, you got any PAT testing stickers?
Yeah.
I've been asked for under pure regulation 6, I think it is, or 3.
Yeah.
And I've been asked to provide my site equipment with PAT testing. And all they want is a label.
Yeah, because it's just a kind of ticking box exercise, isn't it? And it is really a lost opportunity at this point. There's an awful lot more to it. And again, on my course where I teach it, I try to make people go backwards to then go forwards. Try and get rid of this understanding of what they think the industry is, and try and get understanding of what we have to achieve, which is fundamentally our clients have to, under Electricity Work Regulation 4, effectively maintain their system to prevent danger. And so when we go to a customer's property, and we're acting in that role of an electrical expert to provide them with some support for their obligation to maintain a safe workplace for their employers and members of the public who use their space, on an EICR, we'll often just go in and sniff around ZSs. Sniffing out ZSs, just verifying ADS works. That's all that we do. When really we should be doing a much more significant inspection, and then we can sample out the rest of the tests if needed to then supplement that inspection. And it's the same for equipment, really. If you have an expert or someone who's aware of how 61140 works and how all equipment is manufactured to protect against electric shock under the same principles of 7671 basic and fault protection, utilizing ADS as an example, or using double or reinforced insulation, and then just observing the utilization, looking at how people use equipment, how are they trained, how are they instructed, how are they storing it, how are they handling it, what demand. You mentioned pure. Is the equipment adequate for the demand? Is it adequate for the intended use? There's an awful lot of information there. It's got nothing to do with putting a green sticker on the thing. Absolutely nothing to do with it. But we have this thing where we go, okay, here it is. Shake it, look at it, check it, plug it in, continuity, measure it, boom, off we go, do another one. And from my just simple observations, simple things like these testers are manufactured for rapid process. They're manufactured to be testing and go, dump, there's one, what's next? Dump, there's one, not so, what's next? When really you may have to spend 5-6 minutes or so on an item, and depending on how it's constructed, depending on the readily accessible exposed conductive parts, you may have to test the continuity 3 or 4 times. Regards to the way you handle it, the way all the trigger mechanisms, if it's a drill, or the switches, you may have to verify installation resistance 2 or 3 times. I've seen some electrical companies who will do a class 2 IR test. They'll plug the thing in, and the reference probe, which people think is the Earth probe, I call it the reference probe, will be sat on the table. So it'll be driving, 250 or 500 volts down line and neutral through the product in parallel, and it's looking for the probe that's on the table. But they don't think about attaching it to the product because the product's plastic. So they don't think about the test. They don't understand the test. They just go, and that is, we've got a huge issue with competency in that sector.
Yes.
So I'm starting to obviously provide some feedback on the different levels of training that there are, what the code is trying to do from a goal setting perspective, how the legislation ties into that, and what we need to achieve. And again, we need to widen the radar even for owners of a business. If an owner of a business is told by PATA, for example, that, it's only stuff that's portable with a plug on it, and they then may reference one or two things like a hairdryer, there's an awful lot of electrical equipment that just will not be maintained at all. Luminaires as an example. Now, we're not going to PAT test luminaires, but we should at least make a inspection on the suitability and integrity of the equipment. And if we're PAT testing, we can do that because it's under that scope, because it's the in-service inspection of equipment.
Mm-hmm.
There's a huge lost opportunity for people who don't do it properly, because the industry just wants a list of test results and a list of stickers, a bit like the EICR. They want a list of ZSs filled in, and they pay on the quantity. They don't pay on the quality at all, which has created this whole problem. So again, I've joined this little group, and we'll have these are one of those things that could take 5 years or so. It's about just having the discussions and seeing what little changes we can make, what kind of inputs we can have in different spaces. So that's one other thing. What else has been going on online and this week? Even today, I had some chats with a gentleman on LinkedIn about the challenges with neutral current diversion. More importantly, the awareness, the information that's out there, the videos the IT have produced, the expectation of city and guilds, for example, squeezing a little comment on it in the latest handbooks without providing any guidance. And then there's a couple of persons online who are thinking there's not enough information about how we train electricians. There's too much risk here. And so we had some discussions this weekend about the guidance that's available, monitoring for the current, what we're not monitoring for, such as the voltage, and what the original flow diagram said, what the latest flow diagram said, which was the one published in PE, which has a little dangerous live work aspect at the end of it, and what's in Guidance Notes 3. So we had a good discussion on that, and the conclusion is they're not all quite accurate. They're not all quite enough, because really we need to look at the presence of voltages. Because current or no current, if there's current, great, we can measure the current. If there's no current, we won't know that, but there'll be a voltage if there's a open neutral. There'll be a voltage created, and the exposed parts will become, live. And that'll happen the second we separate Earth from the extraneous. The second you separate the earthy conductor of property 1 from the extraneous conductive part coming back from property 2, you'll then create that voltage between them as you open circuit the neutral of the neighbouring property, and it's that isn't actually properly described to test in any of these guides. So we've had those discussions this weekend as well. I don't know if anybody will listen to it, because I'm just an idiot who talks for a lot of the time. The powers that be have to be very cautious what they tell electricians to do, so they probably won't actually tell electricians to do anything that's dangerous, which means we'll probably just be guessing and sniffing around for it. So that was the other thing I did this weekend.
Had a busy weekend.
A busy weekend, really, considering. I also managed to play. I played Ticket for a Ride, whatever it's called, with my second eldest. Introduced him to that game. Played a lot of Xbox with my eldest. Bit of zombies. Actually completed zombies. He was well chuffed. I was running around with this gun, and he was like screaming. He's like, "I've never done it before. I never beat the level before." And I was like, "Well, there you go. What happens when you play with your old man?" And I was like, "Now what do I do?" He drags me around. He revives me like 30 times. But no, he was well chuffed. So that was that one. That was the second, and then the youngest wanted me to play with this. So I've had a lot of running around with the kids this weekend as well. I should really actually go and say hello to my wife because I've actually just been like walking past her all weekend. I'll go give her a hug after this, and then say goodnight because it'll be late. Okay, now, what did you want to cover from the community space? Anything you wanted to discuss?
Yeah, we've had a busy week on the communities. We had one post actually hit 74 comments and a lot of confusion.
Oh no.
So I thought our opinion on that might be a good one to go for. There's probably 2 or 3 to be honest with you, but
Okay. Well,
we'll go through them one by
for
one.
transparency, I pop on the Facebook maybe once a week, twice a week because I've got other stuff. I fully trust the good guys in there and the mods and the admins like yourself. So this will be new to me. So what's the first one? What's the first discussion you wanted to just?
I think I'll just read out the post and we'll
go from
there. I'll skip the first bit. They're doing their 2391 52 exam in the next few months.
Good luck.
What's everyone's? Yeah, good luck on that. Yeah, it's a very good course. What's everyone take on EICRs when it comes to checking the installation and its limitations? Is it expected to be 100% if there is no previous electrical installation certificates or EICR testing been done, or can we be more 20-30%? So thinking of sampling on this, depending on what the customer agrees or limitations. So that's straight away putting me in the kind of the section of how do we obtain safer continued use.
Yeah.
If we are too limited in our scope, what we can test, what we can inspect, and as we know, inspection is one of our biggest. So for me, 100% inspection would be great, but you ain't going to take every accessory off to inspect every accessory.
So there are a couple of things with this, yeah. Well, obviously, let's state the obvious. You started off by saying he's doing his 2391. So immediately that means there are 2 answers to this question, Dave. There's the actual industry's answer, and then there's the training course answer.
Yeah.
So the training course answer will be, if there is no prior records, we will do 100%. Okay, so that's a typical exam question, by the way, where you have no previous records. You then will do full inspection, and then you retain those records, and then subsequently you can then provide significant sampling, and in some cases, such as ring final circuits, it'll even say in Guidance Notes 3, if there's no evidence of modification or adjustments and you have the previous record available, you don't even need to actually do the tests.
Yeah, table 3.4, I believe, is where that comes from, and it does say that.
But we have to establish that record. So if we've got no initial verification, we've got no previous test results, we have to get a record created for reference, which means obviously to the full extent 100%. The negative with that is it will require dismantling, and the course itself won't really have much of a care in the world about that. The designer should have done the best job to make sure dismantling and maintainability is there. Now then there's the industry answer, which is where you're alluding to, Dave, in that really, whilst the intent of 100% would be, preferred there, the reality is with dismantling, with downtime and stuff, it might be that actually it's not in the client's interest, so it's not practicable for you to do that, because obviously that will require a significant amount of downtime for the installation. So from my opinion, therefore, would be, this is my own personal opinion, I would create a hierarchy of risk for the client site. So the client site might have a low risk office environment. It might have a heavy duty industrial environment. It may have an area where the public has access. It may have an area where there's lots of hive of activity where an awful lot of the people congregate, such as the canteen space at regular times. So assess the utilization of the system, and then prioritize the areas that have the higher risk level as we'll do those this time, and then shorten the frequency that you'd normally, let's say you go with a 5-year frequency, then either shorten that to a narrower frequency and then subsequently cover a wider range, or like some would do in many, they'll probably just do 33% every year over 3 years, And then obviously that 33% moving to another 33%. After 3 years, they cover 100%. The main thing is the client must be fully on board, because the client is making the decision. The client is the duty holder. The client has the legislation. You are providing the skills, the instruction, the information. You are a resource at their disposal, so they must know what they're getting out of you. And at the end of the day, your recommendation of 100% is there, but then your appreciation of the impact of that, followed by a risk management, allows them to then take ownership of that risk. Yeah, they may need you to assist in the risk assessment because you're aware of the risk of the electrical installation and the way it's designed, the way it's being used. You can create that risk, and then you can hand that to them, and they can then choose what to do, and then they maintain ownership of that. But the actual answer to the original question here is 100%. 100% sample with no previous records, because that's the City and Guild or the EAL level 3 exam question answer for courses.
Yeah, there was a slight bit in GM3 that I did pick up on in determining the sample size. It should be noted that the minimum population size to get meaningful results is 100 according to statistical sampling theory.
In the absence of any records, yeah?
Yeah, well, it didn't actually say about records, but it did say that means that inspection tested as a whole should cover at least 100 points of electrical equipment. The term electrical equipment is defined in 7671 as follows. And it does say that it's protected devices, wiring systems, accessories, appliances, and luminaires.
And
so
there's a...
If you've got a small house, you might argue that 100% is achievable.
Yeah, it probably would be, wouldn't it? There is a table in there about sampling as well. I think it says like main distribution and switch gear will be 100%, and in other circuits you would then apply certain. So it's not, it's not an exact science, but it's got to be logical. It's got to be understood by the client, and the client will then own the outcome. And that's the key.
We also have, even if we do have a small sample rate here, if we start seeing results that
if
are
you
coming
see
back,
issues, you increase it.
We're going to have to go up anyway. So you're going to be back to how far, and then it just leads you to that whole point of at the start of the book, like any guidance note, any regulation book, it comes down to your own skills, judgment, engineering logic. And basically, you are going to say that this is safe for continued use. Can you use these things in GM3 after to fight your battle if anything was to occur? That's probably where it's a bit sticky.
It's one of those, from my personal experience, it's one of those things where, and I say this on the 2391, and I think I've said it on a podcast before, where what's most important is that you listen to the client. You listen to what the client needs, what does the client need to maintain operation of their business, and you work with them, and you get on board, and you work beside them to help them moving forward. I had a meeting, well, it wasn't a meeting, it was a chat with this lad doing his 2365. Again, he's an engineering apprentice, qualified, he's got 2391, he's done it all. And we had this chat about EICRs on Friday. And because he's trying to obviously increase his business, and he charges, I think £85 or so for the first hour, and then he takes all the money. So we talked about how he runs things and stuff, and then he increases and all this stuff. But then he said he's got some people who will call him up and they'll say, "Oh yeah, you're too expensive. I can get it for this and I can get it for that." And I said to him, and I said this to everybody: if someone is doing an EICR for £85 for it, because I think it was Lee Ward posted this on LinkedIn last week. He shared a post from this person who does gets jobs to people or some crap, and the person said they were looking for someone to do EICRs, and it was £85 a property or £85 an EICR for the total thing, And these are the issues that we have. And as I said to this guy on Friday, if you do EICR to that kind of rate, you're basically just turning up and you're pissing it, aren't you? Really, it's important to understand that, and you let the client understand this, that the EICR is the outcome of an EICR is a representation of the individual. So for example, there's your EICR, Dave, and then there's mine. We've all seen, for example, God rest him, Paul Skirm. Did you see the EICR report he did for that house where we had to assist You know,
It's like 400 pages.
right. So there's an EICR for one, there's an EICR for another, and it's about the professionalism. It's about obviously what the client really requires, and that's why it's you don't have to match EICR prices. Your EICR price is your price because you are you, and the work you put in is your work, and it's what you value your work to be. And then if there are clients that just won't agree with it, then they're not your clients. It's the same thing. I mean, I've got clients that'll pay me for my time, and I've got clients that would immediately, turn their nose up at my costs and stuff, and fine, because I'll provide a certain amount of effort in what I do, and that's the thing. But we call it an EICR as an EICR. It's really not. It's really not. It's whilst it's a report, it is an example of the professional, of the individual who does it, and the value in that is what you're pricing, not the paperwork you produce. It's the value that you put into it. So if people are cheaper than you, then just explain to yourself and then pass on to your customer why there are differences in value, why there are different levels of professionalism going in. And it might be that some customers maybe get a bad experience, then they appreciate, oh, hang on, I need to invest in more of an effort from this other person or whatever. And it's the same with sampling. It's the same with all the work that you put into it. You'll never be you'll never be able to kind of be competitive with everybody, because there'll be people who just won't put as much work in as you want to put in. I know for a fact I put an awful lot more into my training than probably my biggest competitors, who most people would go to ahead of me because they're probably more well known, whatever. But I just don't care. If people come on my course, then I'll do the best I can for them. And that's the point. You just do the best that you can produce for your client at that point in time. So I think, the sampling is the same kind of thing. The amount of effort you put in, the amount of work that you do, it will speak for itself at that point. But it's not about 100%. It's about listening and speaking to the client and not breaking their shit at the same time.
Definitely correct. You got to be mindful that you might have to take a switch off and it's painted around. You're going to ruin a decoration.
Yeah. And and is it really necessary to take it down? You can just do an R2 through the screw, or just look at it. It probably won't require it. So and that's one of the issues with, for example, where you may have an apprentice assisting you. They may not have that logical understanding, and they may just be on like robotic, just lowering stuff, which is great. But then they lower something and they damage it, or they lower something and then the previous electrician just screwed it back just enough so it held a bit, and now that you've undone it, it's all lost, or it's fallen down. We've all done that before. We've got things aligned just right and we screw it back and it's fine, but we definitely don't want to undo that ever again. We've all done that.
Does that come under maintainability then?
It comes under, let's hope no one takes this one off in the future. That's what that comes under.
I think I've been there as well, where you've done a test and you've pulled a socket off and you've gone, I wish I never chose that socket. Why did I choose that one out of all of them? Why that one?
And you can feel the screw. That was a good one. So that was a good one. So I mean, was the consensus in the group varied? Mixed.
Mixed. I don't think GM3 gives you a definitive answer on it. It gives you, as you said, a kind of suggestion for each way and where you want to go with it.
As you said, the book says at the beginning, this is guidance.
Yes.
So it's not going to go do this, do that. It's not going to do that. It gives you some suggestions. And again, I mean, even in our groups, right? We don't expect everyone coming into our groups to be of the exact same goal and mindset. Some people may not want to put as much effort in. Some people may think, no, what I'm doing is enough. Whilst others may go, do you know what? I think I know a bit more. I might try a little bit harder. Joel's worth, whatever. I'm guilty of that a lot, to be fair. You don't have to work that hard if the client doesn't need that outcome. So there will be differences of opinion. And at the same time, no one's right, no one's wrong, really. Your EICR is your EICR. It's your report. It is your piece of work. If the client gets enough from it, great. If the client doesn't get enough value or effective maintenance, because you've just winged it, then that's where you're being a dick. All right, cool. Was there another one in there? Was there another one?
There was one a couple of weeks back actually. We I think we were going to
I
discuss,
think we
but it
forgot
was
to
the
last time, didn't we?
yeah, I think we got a bit carried away. You know how these things go. It's the age-old Type AC, and you find it on an EICR again, and some people
Oh,
will
okay.
code it C2, some C3.
Okay. Yeah.
A lot of debate about a lot of the comments back were we've been fitting these for years, and suddenly they're all wrong.
Yep.
I plugged a lot of DC in and still tested it, and it still worked. Was one outcome of it. I think my own personal opinion on it, in my EICR, I would probably say I don't know what equipment's going to be plugged in, whether it's pulsing, smooth, direct.
Yeah.
You know, it's going to be direct current. I don't know. It's when I leave tomorrow, they might bring
Yeah.
in a load of DC. It might be even more than 6 milliamp the Type A can do anyway. There's all these debates that you can have in your head about the situation. But I think some guidance was C3, some guidance was C2.
Yeah. This is again one of those things where again it's your code, it's your EICR. Now, there's a whole story that goes on with this kind of thing. So we did have original agreement in trade organizations to go down the C2 territory. Well, I say agreement. People thought that until I think it was an IC and one other got involved. When there was another opinion, and then we went from that down to C3. And it's important, without me saying too much, that there are other persons of interest in how the industry decides what is what code. Because again, think about what happened with surge protected devices. One moment we're putting them in as standard domestic properties, and the next moment a little trade organisation goes to a meeting, says, here's a standard from 1980 something or rather, which isn't a standard, it's a technical report. Let's now get rid of this and let's get the IT to redefine what safety services are. And now this housing association issue isn't a problem anymore because we don't have to put in all these surge protection devices. So when we have all these decisions about what is what, it's not always for the interest of us to protect our customers. It's always for other persons, and often it's economical. The reasons are economical. The brunt of it is, if we see through it, we can carry on working regardless. We can just say it could be improved. If we see to it, the issue is we stop the work, or we stop in our tracks because we're now saying this is an unsatisfactory installation. So I've always said, and you go back, anytime I've discussed this, the problem we have here is with us having to then create unsatisfactory for a C1, a C2, and obviously now an FI. That means we are coding to the outcome. So if we want to C2 something because we think it's potentially dangerous, but we don't want it to be unsatisfactory, we move it to C3. And that's kind of what's happening here, because if the socket outlet is for general use, then it's recognized that that has to be an A as a minimum. And general use means that the utilization is of undisclosed equipment type. Therefore, you have no control over the types of equipment that could be plugged into it. So it has to be at least type A. And if anything was to blind or saturate a type AC RCD, then the additional protection, if it is needed for additional protection, wouldn't be deliverable. So there's a couple of things that I would take into account here. First of all, is additional protection needed? Is the utilization of the electrical installation requiring carelessness by user consideration and additional protection for general use sockets? If that's a yes, then I'd say, right, what's the risk here? Well, the RCDs may not work. I go, okay, I can go type A, and I would then put that in. But my personal want, what I personally want to do, is see to it because it's potentially dangerous, but not make the system unsatisfactory. That's the problem. That's the problem. We can't write it in a more technical way for our clients to let them understand that there is a potential danger here, but let's carry on going, and then you can improve this soon. If we had that freedom, we wouldn't be so confused in our codes. Instead, we end up with this argument going, well, I've plugged all these things in and it's never tripped. The fact is, and this is the honest truth from what I've read and studied, if you read 61008, you'll actually identify that the best way to test an RCD is with jack shit connected into it. The point of RCD testing is to verify that the RCD test or the RCD is still functional. What you're doing is you're doing the very last check on behalf of the manufacturer. The second you plug or second you connect cabling into that or any load, you have no idea if it will work, because the RCD test function is not designed to work with cabling or load in the circuit. So there's no guarantee it will work anyway. We are going to, I expect, in 5 years, turn RCD testing into a push test, because it actually serves no purpose as we are thinking of it. We think it is to verify RCD will work, when actually it's just verifying it worked before you did anything with it. That's all it does. It serves no purpose to our electrical installation. So it's kind of pointless. And I had many discussions with this, with manufacturers of test equipment, manufacturers of devices, obviously with the late Paul Skir and some of the other E5 boys, and we all come to the same conclusion. It's just a whole load of, it's a bit pointless. But it is what it is. So I have seen an impact, though, in that when I was delivering a course once, I was on a circuit at a KT66 and a KT63 Plus, which was both QTECs, and I had a Mega 1720. I was at Ascot with my dad. He was delivering a 7909 course. I went there to do an observation of the assessments. I had 2 testers. He had his. We had 3 testers. We plugged them into a board with distro in. We did RCD tests. They had Type A RCDs. They had Type AC RCDs, sorry. And you trip it, it worked fine. You plug a fridge in, a cabinet fridge, didn't trip anymore. So there was a big cabinet fridge that was there. So this has gone on this trip. I took videos. I think I even posted on Instagram. This is about 5 years or so ago. Where there's a picture of a Mega and a QTEC, one above the other. Yeah, the QTEC, it didn't trip with the fridge plugged in. The Mega still did. So a different manufacturer behavior. And this is again why I started sniffing into how these testers worked. I looked into 61557 dash RCDs. Is that 18? I can't remember. The RCD standard. And I started again speaking with Mr. Skirm about what it's doing. And he'd get on a thing and he'd draw it all. He'd go da 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 da. And again he'd say his common phrase, random number generator. You know? And I was at the time looking at that. And then I looked at what happened when obviously we had this AC becoming an A issue. We had this issue with Luden coming through. We had the wine regulations say let's just do it at ×1 at 300 milliseconds. AC setting only. It's all because there's nothing really that we can get out of this now.
Yeah, I agree.
It's all a little bit weird. So coming back to this question about this coding, if I had the freedom to do it my way, I would see to it and I'd keep it potentially as a satisfactory report, because I will properly inform my client about this, because I know how to write and educate my client. Yeah, and I'll provide that information to them, and that's it. So I consider it potentially dangerous. I think of a case, I think of a precedence, and I can think of was it Mary Wary or which one was it where they had electric shock and there was no the RCD didn't, there's no RCD, cables buried in the wall. I think it was Mary Wary with the utensil holder. The absence of an RCD, fatal electric shock. So the absence of an RCD can create a risk of life. And we're saying the RCD may not work, so it's potentially dangerous in my view. Yeah, it's not. Oh, it could be better. And when we look at what happened in the regulations, again, 7909 in 2011 told us to get rid of AC. We've done all these videos about the hysteresis curve, about saturation, blinding effects. We've done the work. We know the issue. We know what the industry wanted. We saw what Europe did. We've seen why we've slowly migrated the changes into the UK. I sat with the IT and I asked them in 2018 when it said that AC is okay for general. And I asked them, what does general mean? And they basically said, don't ask that question. There's no such, It was just a placeholder whilst they were gradually shunting away the AC, whilst the companies could get their bits in order. So it was always going to be happening. Now, what the situation we have now, though, is we've got obviously the code breaker was updated. I think the code breaker is quite well written. I think it says C3, but if you know there's equipment that does have DC leakage, it then pushes it towards a recommended consideration of C2. The Electrical Safety First Best Practice Guide, which the guys at CEF Live are saying is the industry thing that you must follow, is again, it's like half a dozen companies and organisations, many of which are the same company, who are thinking of their stakeholders' interests or their economical partners' interests. And the key interest is do not make AC RCDs a C2 because I'm not paying for them to be replaced.
Yeah, it does come down to a money situation where
Yes,
you think if money wasn't part of it, they would be
it's money, not safety.
Yes, definitely correct, and it's a potentially dangerous situation, and it's one with great consideration. And using your engineering logic every time, you kind of think to yourself, well, I'll be going down that potential dangerous. But then you do get this thing where you go for your own logic, and then somebody will wave this piece of paper at you with best practice guide 4 on it that says C3, and then you've got nothing to fight your corner.
Oh, I have that all the time, and I'll just go. And I can tell you now, I won't do it, obviously, I don't want to embarrass anybody, but I could ring off about 7 or 8 names of people that have tried to challenge me on this exact issue, and I'll say, what about this, what about this, what about this, and they'll go, huh, and they don't say but and tell me a reason I'm wrong, they go, oh, yeah, but this is what we've decided.
Yeah.
So they don't counter what I say, they just say, yeah, but we agreed this. And I'll be like, you can say what you want. If a client comes to me and asks me for my expertise, then I'm standing on that. And I can join all these clubs and all these schemes and all these things. At the end of the day, they don't do shit for me if I'm in trouble.
Very true.
They don't do shit for me. Alright? What matters is my opinion. And if I have 1,000 electricians tell me I'm wrong, because they've read other guides, I'll more than happy go, alright. But I'll then think about all the reading, all the research, all the precedents, all the coroner rule 43s that I've gone through, all the due diligence I've done, and I go, I'll stand on that. I won't stand on this one single document that's got conflicts of interest throughout of it. You know?
Very true. Yeah.
And that's my due diligence on it. And so yeah, I would my personal thing is I would see to it. And I would actually carry on with the system not being unsatisfactory, and I go, I don't give a shit. That's what I would do.
I'll carry on my C2 in as well then.
If I'm using, interesting. It is interesting. It's a very interesting. Again, this is the problem with software because the software will lock you in. That's why I use my own. You know, I use my own little one, Surflex, that we've got developed. Now, if I'm locked in, if I put a C2 and it goes unsatisfactory, I then go, okay, C3. Satisfactory, and then a huge amount of bloody words and a risk assessment that will let the client be informed. You know, because that's the problem with software is it locks us in.
It does, yeah. It doesn't give you that option.
Yeah. That's yeah. I mean, everyone who's disagreeing with me right now, good, fine, okay. If you're thinking, oh, because I don't want to, or oh, because it's easier, or because it's in this one thing I've listened to, or this one book. All I would say is, okay, just do a bit more work and come up with your own engineering decision. Okay? And again, I might be wrong, you may be right. Okie dokie. Now, I do love those little debates though, because it keeps us honest. It keeps us thinking, why is that my opinion? And it keeps us going back into it. I had the same issue with fire, with premature collapse. You know, where I was being told one thing, and I thought, no, this is about the firefighters escaping. And I was being told this, I said, no. Rule 43, Shirley Towers, all this stuff. And I did that, and then yeah, it flipped. You know, they were wrong and I was right, and I had a nice little online meeting with them. You know, it's just, sometimes things just take a bit of time. Okie dokie. Now, I'm just going to quickly cough. Alright, was there any other parts, or was that the Facebook community stuff done this week? I mean,
yeah, that's the Facebook community done this week. There's plenty more content.
Good stuff. It's good stuff, and I do like. I mean, what I do like is that when I do get in there, there's obviously, as you say, there's a good amount of healthy debate. If they start slinging poo at each other, then we'll just tell them to calm down. You know, if you're ever in one of those communities and you have poo slung at you, let Dave know. and we'll just remove people. All right, now I want to obviously have a little bit of a moan about something, and unlike me, obviously one of the things I'm doing a lot at the moment, I'm setting up an e-portfolio system, but portfolios, I've got a few guys doing portfolios with me, and there's a document that's been sent out by a common person scheme, which is basically a pick and mix shopping list of photos, and it's gone around to the point where I've had to kind of take it and I've had to put my branding on it so people can see that actually, hang on, this is the one that I need you to look at. But what it means is they're getting loads of photos, and if you're doing an experienced worker portfolio or an MVQ portfolio, if you're producing photographic evidence as your method of evidence collection, do make sure your photo evidence is authentic. Don't have to be in every single one of them, obviously, but get yourself on site, get photos of you in that workplace. And get the photos or get the evidence to be before, middle, and end. I had a guy send me 900 pictures, right? And almost 850 of them were completed jobs. And I've gone all the way through these pictures. And to be honest, he only does like 5 types of jobs. So it's all the same thing, repeating itself. It's like, okay. So he's thinking, oh, I've sent 900 photos in. I've probably smashed it. I've probably done it. And I'm like, hang on. I can do a little bit, but I can't pull magic out of this. So if you are working on portfolios, or you're working with your assessor, do speak with them, and do communicate with them. But make sure you're getting authentic evidence, and make sure you're getting before, middle, and after. You can use video evidence with City and Guilds anyway, up to I think 10 minutes in length. There are other methods of assessment, direct observation, witness testimony, professional discussion, all these little things. I utilise anything that's suitable. I've got a couple of guys that are trying to rush too fast, and what they're not doing is they're not taking their time, and it takes them longer. So your portfolio, don't just throw a load of evidence at your assessor, because he's not going to have the time, she's not going to have the time to actually go through it. Your portfolio is your portfolio, and they are there to verify your work. So put the work in. If you're unsure what to do, then speak with your assessor. If you're really unsure still, then message me and I'll see if I can help you. Because I've had a few of my own. I've had to kind of go, oh, come on, sort it out. But I've had a few others. We've had obviously a few companies have gone down lately, and I've had a lot of people come over. I had a young lad message me. He's like 16. And I said to him, what's up? And he went, oh, I've gone to a company. There's a company. I'd love to name this company, but I can't. They sell still the list of courses, that this course, what we recognise as a rogue trainer. I've spoken to TESP about this, and they have confirmed that this said company is strongly on their radar right now. But this young lad's gone to this company, and they've immediately said, yeah, sign a contract, and he's come to me to see if I can provide the same, because he'd like to come with me, but he's asked if I can do the same, and I said, well, no, because I don't do that. And I said, why don't you just try and get an apprenticeship, because that's what I'm supposed to say, because we're supposed to push to apprenticeships first. He wants to do it quicker, so I said, well, there is an alternative route of a diploma, where you fund it yourself, and that's an option he is considering. It could be quicker because it's then self-paced, but you still will need a job, and you still will need to get an MVQ done, so you're not going to be qualified until you've worked in the industry for a significant period of time anyway. But it means they can just jump into the learning of the technical stuff, and he's not decided which route to go yet. That fundamentally, he can't really get an apprenticeship unless he finds an employer who is happy to take them on. And by doing the diplomas, they're more in control of their journey, and I get that. But we've had a few cases, and there's one lad that I've got with me at the moment who got out of this company. He got a refund. He lost, I don't know, like $2,000. And then I had another lad who was locked into the contract, and this lad wanted to come over to me. He couldn't stand the learning he was receiving from this other company. They basically did a webinar, 2 webinars a week, with no continuity or no communication with the assessor. And this lad said, I've spoken to you more than I've spoken to my own assessor. And that's just by, WhatsApp. And then I said, well, let's go meet for a coffee, because he's in my local area. And I had a little chat with him. I said, well, look, see if you can just get out of it, but it's up to you what you do. So he tried to get out of this contract he signed, and they said the cancellation cost for him is £2,300 or so to get out of the training he's paid for. They've just locked him in. So he's right now locked in. He can't get out of his training. So I'm kind of offering him free training as an alternative. But I'm so frustrated with all these portfolios and the way things are being done. I know also another company where they simulate all the portfolios. They get all the stuff together and they get 3 or 4 lads around. All the stuff is shown for them. There's so much of an issue going on at the moment. If you're working on a portfolio with an assessor and you're not sure if it's been done right, send me a message and I'll happily give you an opinion. All right? I can't obviously help if you're stuck financially with a contract or anything, but I can provide you with some sort of sense checking as to how things are going. All right. The experienced worker is the majority of my portfolio, guys. It sucks that they have to do this. We do the diploma as a costed effort. There's an alternative route now to the level 2 diploma. If you're 10 years experience in the industry, there's a new assessment route that's just come through, but it has to be EAL. We are set up as an EAL centre. I just haven't put the time in to get it running. So I may have to look into that to get that running, but it's a 10-year thing, and it's basically, I did look at these exam papers. I'm not a big fan of it, but it's just a couple of multiple choice assessments once you've pre-authorised that. But the level 2 diploma, I think, is still quicker at this time because everything's not kicking off with the other route for a while. But yeah, if you're doing these portfolios, I appreciate it sucks. I appreciate the industry's trying to tidy up the mess the industry created. These people who are fixing it are the people who created the problem. But we are trying our best to work with everybody to get them through to the point where they can get back to work, really. But if you have any issues with your portfolios, just send me a message and I can have a look into it. But I am getting gradually more and more frustrated with the behaviour of other said assessors and training companies. And if you think that yours isn't being done correctly, if you think yours isn't being taken seriously, let us know, or I can put you in touch with TASP where you can report it if you think it needs reporting. Anyway, I just wanted to quickly moan about that because I just wanted to quickly get that out there. I need to do some reporting to TASP on Monday about that. Let's talk about something more interesting. Books. I've got a book. This is a book, right? I actually took this from a college library, then I left the college. I should return it, but it's a good book. Electric and hybrid vehicles. So this is actually about the way the vehicles are wired for electric and hybrid connections. So the cabling of actually and the automotive power and then the drivetrain. So this is actually a nice little book. It's got, it's obviously for automotive purposes, but for someone like me who's semi-interested in doing the EV technology shite, I can then use this kind of book to then elaborate on how the vehicle is taking the energy, how it's storing it, and what the risks are. So yeah, I'm still reading it. It's got great examples, illustrations of the safety technology and the efficiency measures that they use, the drivetrain power. But that is it's now in its 3rd edition, Electric and Hybrid Vehicles, by Tom Denton and Haley Pells. I never heard of them. But look, it's got even with battery technology, the anode, the cathode, and the lithium ions and how they charge. It's like, oh yeah, that's fun. So that's the one I'm gradually chewing through. What about you?
Strangely enough, I got that book. I got it on either Amazon or Playbooks.
You got that book?
Recently. Well, when I was doing EV large scale, I got kind of interested in not just how the EVSE worked, but how the actual inner workings of the car worked. I suppose great minds and all that think alike, but I pretty much started to read into that. My books are a bit older.
Yeah, I got this from a college library, and then I left working with a college, and they've not chased me for it. But yeah,
Oh,
I should
they probably
return
can't
it.
find it. You're a ninja after all.
I
No
should
one can
return
find
it, but it's too It's too useful. What book you got? You got any books there?
Do you know what? I took a book away with me on my stay away, and it was Touch Voltage by B.D. Jenkins, and I know you got a copy of it.
We talked about it earlier, actually. Yeah, it's right here.
Yeah, you got it. Got your
Yes.
rang now. It's an old book. It's probably 80s.
Touch Voltage, B.D. Jenkins.
Yeah,
I would say
my
what's
copy
it
came.
about, but I mean,
Yeah, you wouldn't think they could make such a subject and so many pages on touch voltage. My copy came from Paul Meenan, and I think I bought the last copy that's in your hand for your birthday. Pretty much
you
a
did,
couple
didn't you?
of years back.
You mean Paul Meaning gave you this book,
Not that one.
but
I got
your copy of
three
it.
copies. I got 3 copies. I know, sad. 3 copies. JPE's got one.
Oh, good.
I got
JPE.
Paul Meenan gave me his copy, and you've got a copy that I
Yeah.
bought for you for your birthday, which is probably the last copy.
Probably the
in
last physical
existence.
copy.
Nobody does anything like this, and B.D.
No.
Jenkins always goes in, making up M factors and different how you explain the voltage differences. And
It's
scenarios.
electrical engineer writing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's so much more interesting than the technical garbage we have. Yeah, call out to JP though. I mean, it's wonderful stuff he's doing. Hopefully, he creates some bits from this.
I think touch voltages are hard. They're hard to work
They
out
are.
because you don't have a fixed current all the time. So, it's Ohm's law, isn't it? It's resistance.
It's Ohm's
and
law,
current.
but with a current that's dancing around and changing its mind, isn't it?
Exactly. How do you get a fix?
Because it's obviously proportional to the actual resistivity of every single target.
Yeah. It does lead to a question that sort of came up in our groups as well, where we had extraneous bonding. When you have the plastic insert normally, as 411312 goes on to say, we don't need to bond the extraneous part.
Yeah.
But that's what made me pick up that book, because we had not an incident, but a discussion online where it said actually it's more dangerous to bond the non-extraneous pipework. But then there's the argument back again, but hang on a minute, the CPC and the boiler to the manifold is already earthed it.
Yeah, and
so I had a bit of a backward and forward with two members that were like, I've heard that before.
Yeah.
I've heard that it's more dangerous to bond it.
And the thing is, this comes back to the whole problem of wanting a easy answer. Do we? Don't we?
It's not
and now and then we get the people go, well, if it's extraneous, then bond it. If it isn't, then don't. And then they go, what about that? Is it 22 or 23K?
22.
I remember, I think I've got it on my computer here actually. Paul's paper on that before he passed away. The 20,
Yeah, I've got that one.
Yeah.
It's impossible to do.
It's basically saying that our current MFTs don't have the range on them to verify the test industry says we should do. Is that right?
It goes on to say about that, but it also says that the parallel paths and disconnecting them from the manifold to the radiators to everything else would have to all be taken apart to definitely 100% sure take that parallel path away.
Because you can't say it's an extraneous unless you can you have to isolate it.
Yeah,
from everything else.
Probably only do that at a new installation when everything's not in.
Which comes back to the question. So a typical electrician may go, well, I'll just add it then. Better to do it than not do it. That's not always the case with bonding. Because sometimes if you have no need to do it, but then you do it, you actually make a situation that was fine a little bit less safe because you're creating reference potential points.
Yeah.
You're
giving it a better path, which is going to increase the voltage up.
Yeah. So you're making a potential point which may have had no significant potential, no risk of electric shock, and you're making it now a direct one. And ADS hopefully works, but that's less safe than it was before you put the bonding in. I think I know what it is.
I like to think of it as yes, you do have a CPC to the boiler and the manifold.
Yep.
But then from the manifold coming down, you've got all the pipework, the joints, and the length of this copper tube with all the joints. You're slowly reducing.
And they're literally
and
so what they're doing is they're taking those references and they're making them further apart, aren't they?
Which could make it potentially more of a problem if you had this at a nice bonded level, and this at a high impedance level. You've got a touch voltage.
Yeah, exactly. So simultaneously accessible parts. It comes back to the theory of you could do the measurement and you could look at the RA and then you could work up the current and look at what the voltage will be. The RA of the fault current, then the RA of the resistance between the parts, and then you've got, if you multiply that by the current that is there in the fault, if that is in excess of 50 volts, then that's where we would normally put in supplementary. But there's an awful lot of things there that actually shift, and they're not things that we can't accurately gather that.
No.
We can do it on a desk, in a design, yeah, that's fine. But in reality, when we have so many different moving targets, it's very hard to get that assurance. I've read a bit of B.D. Jenkins also in one of the bigger electrical books, and I think there's a little section of this in that other book, a section of it, but not the entirety of it.
Engineering Judgment or Logic as a book. I got so many of his books. Like, a lot of his commentary on the regulations used to be by B.D.
His old
Jenkins.
commentary, yeah, before Paul Cook did it.
One of my favourite authors, to be honest. And
yeah,
that has very good plotted out diagrams onto like the curves of the devices. It does go on a lot about your old school like 3036s. It doesn't really have many.
No mention of AFDDs in here, I'm sure.
None. That was really an 80s book.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I said, it was the hardest one. One last one I could find for your birthday was that book.
That book.
And that was not
a few years ago, isn't it?
That's an expensive book. I'll be honest with you. I'm not telling you how much that was, but that cost me a lot of money to get.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Well, what we need to do then is we need to put that investment in some proper time. I mean, I've read it a few times, but I think what we need to do is actually do a bit of piece. You've got it, I've got it. We can actually put some effort into actually interpreting some of this a little bit and focusing on, we can make some a couple of little videos on that, because it
needs taken apart, because the way he is, and everybody was an engineer back then, it's kind of like very hard to
It is, and that's the thing is, and we've said this a few times now, is you've got, the IEE electrical engineers, now the IET tech. Nowadays it's like, all right, buy that, turn it on, does it work? Great. Don't it work? Buy a new one. We don't really have that engineering. It's definitely being, it's definitely dying off. I think a lot of those good guys have retired or retiring, and we've now got, part P in this whole switching standards of training and industry routes. That's 2004, 5?
Yeah,
2006, 2007, 8, etc. Where it got chaotic, and 9, 11, and then all the way since. So we're talking about now 20 years. 20 years where the route into the industry has been, to my personal opinion, challenging. I mean, I've seen, because I've been in the training game for so long, I've seen so many different periods of routes in, different standards of assessment, different challenges that we now have. And even though we have TESP doing a fairly good job right now, trying to tighten the qualifications up, trying to tidy up the mass, we still have a significant problem in the FE sector, where we've got obviously a huge issue with the retention of the funding and dragging people through. We're getting people passing apprenticeships who shouldn't be passing apprenticeships. So an awful lot of the people coming out of FE, a lot of them, not all of them, there's great colleges, but a lot of them getting through FE are not going to be up to par. And it's a case of using things like this and E5 and other resources and stuff, eFix, etc., etc., trying to find ways to motivate them to carry that on, because the FE place for the 6 or 7 colleges I know personally well isn't up to scratch. I know some good colleges as well, by the way. I know some very good ones, but I know some shit ones. I work with quite a few, and so I think we go through these little periods where there's standards, and I think it's very hard when we're just trying to figure out the right way to kind of move forward when everyone else is just trying to set this industry on fire. It seems such a shame. All right, but no, that's again. Thank you for this. I have read it a few times. You got me this 3 years ago?
Yeah, 3 years ago.
3 years ago. I have I've never taken it out of my office, because it's one of those ones I've always thought, I'm going to work from this book. We need to create some content from this book. It's just too good a resource, and it translates it so differently that we need to touch into it. Here you go. I've got some examples here on 3-phase circuits, BS88 fuses, 3036 fuses, as you say. Yeah, we need to have a crack on that. A little play with that. Good. All right, mate. Well, CPD books are covered up. I think have we run out of things to talk about today?
I mean, we could keep going for years, but
well, I wrote a list of things that we were going to cover.
Yeah,
I think we've got.
I think everybody's fallen asleep by now.
I think everyone's gone to sleep. Yeah, they're probably thinking, "Come on, guys, shut up." All right, let's conclude, and I will crack on with 699472, and I'll come back with some more information on that next week, and we'll do some bits on voltages as well. All right, mate. You want to say farewell, and I will wrap this up, and we'll see you guys next week.
Yeah. See you all next week.
Bye bye.